Which of these mistakes are you making right now? Because I've made most of them myself, and a few of them cost me real engines and real money. Today I'm counting down the 15 worst things Harley owners do without even knowing they're doing them. Habits that strip threads, cook cylinders, shred belts, and turn an 800-pound motorcycle into an expensive garage ornament. Some of these are 5-minute fixes. 2 of them can put you on the pavement. And the one at the top of the list? I guarantee half of you did it this week. Let's find out. Quick ground rule before we start. This isn't me talking down to anybody. This list is 30-odd years of my own receipts, plus everything that rolls into the clubhouse every season wearing somebody else's mistake. I've ranked them from the ones that just cost you money to the ones that cost you engines and worse. Count how many you're guilty of as we go, be honest. Nobody can hear you. Number 15, treating the bike like furniture. You know the guy, $300 of chrome polish on the shelf and he's never owned a torque wrench. A Harley that gets detailed every Sunday and inspected never is just a shiny machine quietly going wrong. The polish doesn't know what your belt tension is. Here's the free fix. Make the wash and inspection. Hands on the fasteners, eyes along every line and hose, fingers on the sprocket. The rag becomes a diagnostic tool, and you'll catch half this list before it costs anything. Speaking of washing, though the way most people do it is, number 14, pressure washing. That satisfying wand blasts water straight past seals that were only ever designed to keep rain out. Wheel bearings, steering head, switch housings, connector blocks, grease goes out, water stays in, and the bill arrives months later as a growl from a bearing or electrical gremlins nobody can trace. Corroded pins in a connector will have you chasing a phantom misfire for a whole summer. Bucket and low pressure. Keep the spray away from bearings and electrics, and go for a short ride after so heat dries what the towel can't reach. And when you're done, a dab of dielectric grease in the connectors you've disturbed over the years buys you cheap peace. It's the difference between a plug that seals and a plug that quietly grows green fur. Boring advice. Cheap advice. That's usually the good kind. Number 13. Bolting on accessories and never looking at them again. A big V-twin is a fastener loosening machine that's not an insult, it's physics, and it's why the roadside collects mirrors, license plates, and highway pegs. Anything you bolt on gets its torque checked again after the first 50 miles, and again at the next service. A drop of blue thread locker on the small stuff, blue, not red, because red means you'll need heat to ever get it apart again. 30 seconds with a wrench, or one day your saddlebag lid is in someone's windshield. Your pick. Number 12, and now we're in pavement territory. Tires. 2 sins here. First, pressure. An 800-pound motorcycle punishes low pressure with cup tread, wallowing corners, and in the worst case, a blowout, and pressure needs checking weekly, cold, not glanced at annually. Second, age. There's a 4-digit date code stamped on the sidewall, week and year the tire was made. Rubber hardens as it ages no matter how much tread is left, and a hard old tire lets go in the wet without warning. Plenty of low-mile garage queens are rolling on tires older than some of their riders. The tread looks showroom. The rubber has the grip of a bowling ball. Tread depth is not the whole story. Check the date, and keep a pressure gauge in the jacket pocket where it actually gets used, not in the toolbox where it doesn't. And tires and wheels are shop work unless you're properly equipped. This is one system that decides whether you stay upright. Number 11. The belt nobody looks at. That final drive belt lives inches off the road, catching everything the front tire throws at it, and one sharp stone driven through it ends your ride wherever you happen to be standing. Look along it with a flashlight when you wash the bike cuts, missing teeth, stones lodged in the sprocket. Check the tension the way your manual says, because too tight chews the bearings and too loose snatches. A belt gives you warnings for months before it lets go. Almost nobody reads them, and the tow truck driver doesn't care either way. Number 10. The oil confusion. On a big twin, there are 3 separate holes: engine, primary, transmission, and each one wants its own fluid doing its own job. The one that catches people is the primary. Because your clutch lives in that fluid, pour in an oil built for a car, loaded with friction modifiers designed to make things slippery, and you've just lubricated the one component whose entire job is to grip. Then you're shopping for clutch plates and blaming the clutch. Overfilling the primary causes its own misery. Oil is the most expensive sentence in motorcycling. And while we're in there, changing the engine oil religiously while the primary and transmission fluids stay in place for a decade isn't maintenance, it's a ritual. All 3 holes have intervals. The spec and the schedule are in the manual. Use them. Number 9. Over-tightening. Somewhere along the line, men of my generation decided that tight is good, so tighter is better, and soft aluminum has been paying for it ever since. Derby cover screws 1 inch-pounds finger and a bit territory, not a gorilla on a 3/8 ratchet. Drain plug strip, spark plug C's, and a strip thread turns a 10-minute fluid change into a weekend, with a helicoil kit, if you're lucky. A basic torque wrench costs less than 1 ruined cover. And learn the units before you learn the tool. Inch-pounds and foot-pounds are 12 apart. And I've watched a grown man torque a derby cover to 30 foot-pounds because the manual said 30 and he didn't read which 30. Tight is tight, tighter is broken. I wish someone had tattooed that on me at 25. Number 8, letting it sit. A parked Harley isn't paused. It's decaying on 3 fronts at once. The batteries being drained flat by the bike's own electronics. The fuel's going stale in the tank and injectors, and the tires are flat spotting under all that weight. I made an entire video on the battery half of this, on what the bike steals while it sits, and the cheap gadget that stops it. So I'll just say, maintainer on the battery, stabilizer in a full tank, roll it a foot now and then. Storage is a job with a checklist. It takes 20 minutes in November, and it decides what kind of spring you have, the kind where the bike starts, or the kind where the season opens with a parts order. Do the job. And if you've been nodding along guilty so far, that like button cost you nothing, and it tells me to keep making these. Halfway point. If you've counted 3 or more already, don't feel bad, feel motivated, because the back half of this list is where the engines start dying. Number 7, brake fluid, the forgotten fluid. Brake fluid absorbs water out of the air. It's designed to, and after a few years there's enough moisture in it that hard. Repeated braking can boil it. Boiled fluid is compressible. And a compressible fluid means the lever comes back to the bar exactly when you need it most, on the long downhill, with the pickup pulling out ahead. If your fluid looks like iced tea, it's overdue. Every couple of years, fresh fluid, the exact DOT type stamped on the reservoir cap, and this matters double on Harleys, because depending on the year, the factory filled some models with silicone-based DOT5 and later ones with glycol-based DOT4, and those two absolutely do not mix. Pour the wrong one in, and the fluid can turn to sludge inside the lines. The cap tells you. Believe the cap, not the parts store shelf. And brakes are a system where pretty confident isn't confident enough. If bleeding brakes is new to you, pay a professional and watch them do it. Number 6, riding around the warnings in your bearings. A little notch in the steering when you turn slow. A faint rumble that follows road speed. A shimmy when you take a hand off the bar. And the excuse I hear every time. Harleys just feel like that. No, they don't. Head bearings and wheel bearings wear slowly enough that you adapt without noticing, and the machine steadily gets worse at the one thing it must do, steer. Front wheel off the ground, feel for the notch, rock the wheel for play. Finding it is easy, fixing it is proper work with real torque procedures, another one where a shop is money well spent. Number 5, loud pipes and no tune. Slap on the free-flowing exhaust and the open intake. Skip the fuel management because that's another $400, and congratulations, you've leaned the engine out. Lean means hot. That's the popping on deceleration, the hanging idle, the rear cylinder ticking like an angry stove after every ride. An engine can live surprisingly long, slightly lean, which is exactly the trap. It sounds fantastic while it slowly cooks its own exhaust valves. If you change what goes in or out of the engine, budget for the tune the same day. Want evidence off your own bike? Pull a spark plug. Healthy is a light tan color on the tip. Bone white or blistered means the engine's been running hot and hungry, and it's been trying to tell you since the day the pipes went on. It's not an accessory. It's the other half of the pipes you already bought. Number 4, lugging it. Yes, a big V-twin makes torque down low, and no, that doesn't mean 6th gear at 1800 RPM up a hill with a passenger. That shuddering snatch through the driveline, that metallic rattle under load, that's the engine begging for a downshift while detonation hammers on the pistons and every slack point in the drivetrain gets punched in the mouth. Riders hear the compensator clunking and blame the part. Half the time the part is just reporting the crime. Drop a gear. If the engine can't accept throttle smoothly, you're in the wrong gear. That's the whole rule, and it works on every bike ever built. The engine wants to work, not strain. There's a difference, and your wallet learns it eventually. Number 3. Cooking it at idle. An air-cooled engine has one cooling system moving air, and at a standstill, it has none. The rear cylinder suffers worst, buried behind the front one, breathing its exhaust. That's why the newer bikes have a feature that shuts the rear cylinder down in traffic when it gets hot. The factory literally built an emergency response to what this mistake does. And yet, the 10-minute driveway warm-up so the neighbors can enjoy it, the 20-minute idle at the meetup, extreme heat scores cylinder walls and seizes pistons. Start it, give it 30 seconds. Ride off gently, that's the warm-up. And when traffic stops moving on a hot day, find shade or shut it off. It's not delicate, it's just air-cooled. Number 2. And this one's for a specific crowd. If you ride a twin cam from '99 to 2006 and you've never had the cam chain tensioners inspected, put it on the list this season. Those early engines tension their cam chains with spring-loaded plastic shoes, and the shoes wear sometimes fast. The service manual's own limit is 60 thousandths of an inch of material left, and the common advice is to look somewhere in the 35 to 40,000 mile range, though some wore out far earlier. Here's why it made number 2. When a shoe wears through, the plastic doesn't just disappear, it goes into your oil system, into the passages that feed the whole engine, and the end of that story is a rebuild. The fix inspection, better shoes, or the later hydraulic setup costs real money. The ignored version costs the engine. Ask me how the clubhouse knows. And number 1, the worst mistake Harley owners make without knowing it isn't a task at all. It's a sentence. They all do that. The new tick you didn't have last month, they all do that. The vibration that showed up after winter, the drip under the primary, the hot smell at stoplights character, right? Charm? No. Every dead engine I've ever helped carry out of a frame announced itself first, weeks or months ahead, quietly, and somebody wrote the announcement off as personality. These machines are honest to a fault. They tell you everything, in noise and smell and feel. The worst mistake on this list is training yourself not to listen. Every other mistake I've named tonight survives because of this one. So count. How many? If you're under 5, you're ahead of most of the parking lot at any rally. Here's the honest sorting. Most of this list is forgiving. Washing smarter, checking torque, watching a date code, downshifting free or nearly free. No skill required, just attention. 3 of them are not forgiving. Tires, brakes, and steering, because those decide whether the ride ends in your driveway. Do the looking yourself, but hand the fixing to a professional the moment you're out of your depth. That's not weakness. That's a man who plans to keep riding. The one habit that beats everything here. 15 minutes a month, cold garage, coffee, flashlight, and a slow walk around the machine with your hands on it. And a service manual for your exact model, which costs less than any single mistake in this video. So, 15 worst mistakes Harley owners make without even knowing? Not anymore. Now you know. What you do about it, that part's always been on us.